Good morning, everybody. Let's get right to it. I got my coffee. Hope you got yours too. It's time for another Coffee with the Cowbell. And today we will continue our series on Microsoft Teams basics. Last week we talked about chat, both in the 8 a.m. Eastern Tuesday session as well as the Thursday night 9 p.m. Eastern session. Because I didn't realize the basics of chat would take like an hour to go through. At least I guess the way I do it. Hopefully I do a little better with the basics of files, which is what we'll talk about today. And then, of course, by the way, we're streaming this. You may be watching this on one of 5 platforms. Do I have those still? Oh, there we go. Yeah. You may be watching this on one of these 5 platforms. I am simultaneously streaming them all. So check it out on your platform of choice, either live or on demand. All right, there's the commercial. Let's jump over and let's get into it. Talk about the basics of files in Teams. So yes, you're out there. You know, maybe new to Teams. What are you using it for? You know, probably meetings initially, maybe primarily. Now you're starting to get into collaborating with teams, and you realize that files are a part of your collaboration. One key thing about files and teams that should be useful to you as you are working with your teammates or team members in Teams with files. The big advantage is that those files are automatically shared with everyone in the team. And so by using Teams for our files, we automatically get rid of one common pain point in terms of file collaboration, which is sharing, and does the person I'm sharing with have the right permissions? Can they get to the file? All that stuff. So that's one of the key values of what we're going to do here. But in this whole files thing, the key place to go. So, you know, we're here in Teams. We're looking at our teams over here, and bring this over here. And the Files tab is a nice, easy, straightforward way to get at the files for that particular team, specifically in that particular channel. So, you know, quick rundown on a team, what a team is. These teams are named here, and each team has channels. Channels are basically areas to talk about a particular or to work on a particular topic. For instance, the digital assets web channel is where we'd have conversations about digital assets for the web. And it's also where we would, in theory, store files related to digital assets for the web. So every channel has its own file. And in theory, you could think of it as the files for that particular channel. Obviously, you could put any file in these, but that's the thought. What I like about that is that it's just very straightforward. Where are my files? They're in the Files tab. Okay, so you'll find this Files tab. I believe it will, should always, I guess it could be, I don't know if it could be a different order, but it should always be the second tab in the channel. And that's where they are. Now, before I go further with that, you'll probably say, well, then what is this files thing over here? It is also a place to go to get files. Let's click on that. And we'll see that it has a long list of files that you have access to. Some of maybe ones you own, some may be files that other people have created and shared with you because of team membership. So what we see here as we go down is the recent files, but again, it lets us know the location of those files in terms of what team they are in or whether they're in your OneDrive. If we click on Microsoft Teams here, get a more team specific view of files. In other words, I'm not finding my OneDrive files here. And then a nice handy link to any files we've downloaded, including a link to our downloads folder. Excuse me. And then also a convenient link to our OneDrive storage. So again, this isn't team specific OneDrive. This is just a convenient link to the OneDrive folder that you already have. You could also have, as you can see here, cloud storage. This could be a place where you come and access your Dropbox files or other, any other of these listed here. So files is really a convenient, I would call it a button of convenience to give you one place to get at all your files that are in a less structured way, right? The other way was channel specific. This is just all your files, throughout Teams, throughout OneDrive, and other places. So that is a useful spot. I myself don't use the Files tab very often, maybe because of the fact that I either search for things or I know where they are already. Okay. So let me do one thing here. All right. So, but having come here and having talked about OneDrive, let's dive into that for just a second. So again, we're kind of at the high level. How do files work in Teams is really kind of what we're doing here before we dive into actually creating or using a file. In our team here with this Files tab, I like the simplicity of it. You don't really have to know anything about how this works to use these, right? I have a spreadsheet here I want to open. I click on it. It's going to open in Teams without even leaving Teams. I can edit this as much as I want. It automatically saves, all that good stuff. I can open it in other ways, which we'll see in a sec, but that's pretty simple, right? The file is there. We open it. Same for OneNote, Word, all the Office files. This is even a video file that opens. Obviously, goes over into the browser. I don't know. I can't remember what I did with that one that kept that from opening. But Teams does open a surprisingly large list of different kinds of files. So if you're working with 3D files, or if you're a graphic artist working with graphic files, if you're working with a lot of different video files, you'd be surprised how many of those files will natively open in Teams. That being said, under the hood of this is SharePoint, storing these Teams channel files. You can, if you're a SharePoint lover like me and want to see these in SharePoint in order to do SharePoint-y kind of things, you can see there is an open in SharePoint button there. I use the three dots here to open in SharePoint. I believe on each file I can do the same thing, right? Three buttons next to the file. There's an open in SharePoint there as well. And it takes me over. Oh, this is because it's the wrong profile. There we go. Let's just do this one. Open in SharePoint. So that's why that file didn't open. I was in the wrong browser. But we see it opening, and it looks just the same. But this is SharePoint. So that's the back end of the files in the Teams channel. If you remember from our chat basics, though, we also have files in chat. Okay, let's go to Bob here. Like this one here. The difference is chat is using OneDrive for files. Okay, so if you are enabled for both, to some degree, you don't have to necessarily understand the difference there. You just do your file thing, right? Upload from your computer or whatever. So this happens to be OneDrive, but in theory, you could ignore that, right? But I'm sure there's going to be some scenario where knowing that fact is going to be important. Okay, but from Teams' perspective, it tries to keep that very seamless for you so that you don't necessarily have to think about that. But I just wanted to call that out. One value of the Teams files being in SharePoint. One, by definition, it makes sense. OneDrive is my files. SharePoint is our files. So SharePoint, are files that aren't owned by an individual. They're owned by everyone in the team. So it makes sense that that's that way in the channel. But the other reason that's cool is that if you are a SharePoint lover, you spent years learning how to work SharePoint and do file management in SharePoint, you still get the benefit of all that knowledge because you can still do those things in Teams. Not everything from SharePoint is brought over into the Teams interface here. One common one, if you're a SharePoint user, that you'll see missing from this context menu from 3 buttons is history view, version history, right? That may be one that you're used to, that you would have to go over to SharePoint to see. So we'll come over here and you'll see the 3 buttons here. It does have version history. Okay. So whether you see it in Teams or not, you still have the benefit of it. Is kind of the point I'm making there. Okay. And all the other fancy stuff that you might do with SharePoint is still at your disposal because SharePoint is the back end. Last thing I'll say is you might say, Ricardo, I cannot stand having to come into some other interface to get at my files. I've been working in files in Windows Explorer for 20 years. Why can't I just do it that way? Now I got to do all this fancy stuff. Ha. What you're probably saying is that you want to, see something like this. So you can see here, Contoso is the name of the company for you, whatever your org's name is. You can access files in Windows Explorer, open them, edit them, all that stuff. You can see from the little cloud picture, they are cloud synced. I'm not downloading all of these to my machine to work on them. They sit in the cloud. Windows knows how to interact with them. I could have a terabyte, a folder with a terabyte of files in it. I don't know, it might take up a gig or something on my machine or something like that. But yes, that world can happen. How do I get there? It's basically just the sync button. It's the 3 dots there. If you're over in SharePoint, I think it looks the same there as well. Sync. Sync is what makes that happen. So for any particular folder, like you're interested in this digital assets web, you let SharePoint and OneDrive do its thing, and then it will sync over to I was already syncing that one, but it will sync over to your machine, to your local machine. Okay, so you got the best of both worlds. If you're okay with the browser or the Teams client, you can continue. You can do that. If you would rather work in Windows Explorer, you can do that too. So I can work on these Teams files without ever having to go to Teams. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So then getting into creating files, it is as straightforward as you would expect, especially if you've been using SharePoint before. The new button opens all of your basic Office files, and it's going to create a new one and automatically store it in the place where you are. So if I start up a new Word document, for instance, it's going to keep me in Teams. I don't have to leave it. I don't have to open up a new application, and I can proceed to do my work right here in Teams. You can see that it is auto saving it to the cloud. All is good, and it is there. How do I get this to my team members? I don't get it to my team members. I don't deliver it to my team members. They already have access to it right now. Anybody in this team can see this doc, can open it, can edit it. That's the default settings for the team. So all I really have to do is tell them about it. So best practice for telling team members about Teams. What I won't have you do as a Coffee with the Cowbell viewer, I cannot allow you to go in here and chat and start to say the sentence, hey, I put a new file in the Files tab called blah, blah, blah in the so-and-so folder. That's not how we do it in 2022, going into 2023. If you want to tell them there's a new file, the best thing is just to hit the link, browse the teams and channels where that file is, which I think for us was, I think that was here. Where was I? Can't. Oh, there. Yeah. Share a link. Boom. I've told them about it with a nice thumbnail. Doesn't matter where it is really, although the information is there. But if I want to see this file as another team member, then I just go ahead and click on it. It just opens. We do our thing. And then of course I would, back to our chat basics, I would have mentioned people who I want to make sure are seeing this. Okay. So that's the 2022 way of sharing files with folks. Again, I didn't really share it with them because it was already shared with them. I just a nice way of them knowing about it. What you also notice here is that now we can have a conversation about this document. I basically started a conversation thread about this document. I mean, in theory, I would have put some context to it. This is the greatest document ever, and then let them debate that, right? So, but then they had got this whole conversation about the document. So that's a nice part of Teams too, is collaborating on a document and having conversations about that document through our collaboration. Different from comments in the file. That's some other stuff. So we've done that, right? We've created a file in Teams. So I'm opening, this is a different file I'm opening. The other key piece and the other, for many, mind-blowing piece to this whole Teams file thing, which is really a SharePoint file thing, is real-time co-authoring. So I am in this document. Let's see, where did I open that from? So this is Mark 8 General Test 1, 2, 3. If I come over to Nestor, and hopefully he's in the Mark 8 project too, otherwise that makes this harder. He's not. Deborah is, and I think Deborah is here. Yep, so we're opening up Deborah. And she's going to go to the Mark 18 once it opens. I think I was in general. So this is Deborah here. She's going to files. She's opening up test 1, 2, 3. And she starts to work. But the cool part, as you'll see, little bubble here, Ricardo, as it says, is, what did it say there? It's on page 1 of this doc. And in fact, you can see Ricardo's green cursor there. This is real-time co-authoring. So if I try to put these side by side, you can see Deborah. So this is Ricardo. This is Deborah. You can see Deborah's in there. You can see Deborah's cursor. And so as we're working, we are getting real-time collaboration. So the days are gone of saying, hey, I'm working on this file. When I'm done, I'll give it to you. Then you can do your part. Those days are gone. we go in the document at the same time to collaborate on it. We don't have to wait for one another for that. Okay. So this is another key piece. Now, this isn't really a team. I mean, Teams is getting this because of SharePoint. Why do I call it out? Because I was a SharePoint geek before I was a Teams geek. And so I got to give props to where the power is coming from. But nevertheless, the power is now yours as a Teams user, this real-time collaboration. So that is another key piece to this. Again, the value, I opened it in Teams, didn't have to leave Teams, edit it there, collaborate there, easily share it, or it's easily already shared. Those are all those key benefits. Your chat files will also have real-time collaboration. OneDrive is powering that. Just a little, difference there. Okay. And so again, the last thing I guess I'd say here is just suggestion is you're working with team members to store and work on your teams, on your files that are Teams related in Teams. Why do I say that? Because so many people in 2022 own and have access to these powerful cloud tools, but they are still working on documents and saving them to their My Documents or their desktop, which is a local copy that you only own. When it's on your machine, you lose all that power of real-time collaboration, easy sharing. That's on your file to be easily lost when your machine messes up or is turned off, as opposed to being in the cloud, accessible to others, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that's just whether it's OneDrive, which is, your files until you share them, or SharePoint, which is kind of share right away, but do it in the cloud. These are the days when we shouldn't have to say, oh my goodness, I lost my doc because I didn't hit save. It's 2022, auto save, cloud. The future is here, right? Local file. I can't think of a good reason for you to be doing your primary document stuff on your local PC, unless you just don't like the cloud or something. I don't know. So Ricardo's tip is take advantage of these things. All right. All that being said, hopefully you've seen the benefits there. And then the last thing I'll say about this is, once you've committed to putting these things in SharePoint and OneDrive, the other thing you get that your local files won't give you is making this search box super powerful. When I search for tests 1, 2, 3, I'm going to immediately in the files here find those test 1, 2, 3, or whatever it is that I'm searching for, right? This box is searching across all my Teams files, which is essentially all my SharePoint files that are Teams connected, as well as I believe my OneDrive files as well. And there are other search boxes throughout the Office 365 ecosystem, in SharePoint, in your Office 365 homepage, etc. But again, the fact that I am working on these files in the cloud makes these search boxes all the more powerful. They are searching not just the word or the file name, but they are also searching within the file. Office 365 has already indexed all of them. So if I'm looking for a word that's on page 55 of a PDF document, the search box will find that word. So that is another reason why you should work in the cloud and not on your local PC, which could do that. But again, it's just it would take longer and all that stuff. Just use the cloud. All right. So that is a quick rundown of files and Teams, trying to focus on the key pieces of your brand new, the key pieces that you would want to understand, using files and Teams. Okay. So hope that was helpful. Get your coffee, get the rest of your day started. Glad you started off with me, but let's get it going. This has been Coffee with the Cowbell.